Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first podcast. This podcast is Unfiltered with Bob Z. On this podcast, we promise to give you the unfiltered truth, and we're going to also talk about things that are current in the community, and I guess the world is a community now, it seems like, and so we're going to talk about world events, which are in turn community events. And today, our very first guest for our very first podcast is City of Norfolk School Board member from Ward 3. He represents Ward 3, Mr. Carlos Clanton. Welcome, Mr. Clanton. How you doing today?
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I've been watching and knowing Mr. Clanton for quite some time. He's always been a stalwart in the community, and so we're looking forward to what he has to say about some of the issues. And so we'll just jump right into it. As a school board member, I guess the number one topic on earth right now is the pandemic. So, no matter, and I was just thinking that, no matter who you are on this planet, the pandemic has affected you in some way. That's every country worldwide. But so we're going to try to narrow our focus just a little bit.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, but I guess the big issue, it's become not even just a health issue, but also a political issue when we have the president saying, open the schools, and just period, open the schools blindly. And so I want to know from you, since you are a resident expert on the issue, and I want to know, how do you feel about the students logically not being able to return to school this fall?
Well, I appreciate the question, and thank you for having me here. And as a member of the school board, I'm here speaking on what I think. We have protocols and things, and so I'm not representing the board, but as a board member. But when it comes to our students, I am always been an advocate that making sure that we provide a safe and secure learning environment, not only for our students, but for our staff members and our teachers, everybody who has to go in there each and every day. Do I want children to be in the classroom? Is that the best place for them to learn? Absolutely. However, if I cannot provide without a certain shadow of a doubt that they're going to be safe and secure throughout this pandemic, then no, I think the board made a decision on last month in July to go to 100% virtual learning, which is going to be a totally different experience for our students compared to what they had in the spring. It's much more structured, like a regular school day. But that's the only thing for the first 9 weeks, and Norfolk led that, and now all the other school divisions here in Hampton Roads are following. Right.
Well, it's like I said, you really don't have a choice.
No.
Every job that I've had, and every position has always been the first thing they talk about is safety. Number one overall. So I don't see why it should change now, and definitely now with all the pitfalls.
And definitely when you think about the asymptomatic symptoms, you mentioned the president,
right?
Who has consistently talked about open the schools. But to be perfectly honest, it's the same thing. If hopefully we've learned our lesson as we're seeing it right now when it was open business. We need to get back out here, and now we're seeing these spikes all over, including in rural America.
Right.
But the main issue with this particular virus is that it has asymptomatic symptoms, meaning that you can have it and not know it. And when you start talking about the safety and security, it's just like having all of these people come in, students, and I love our babies. But we got to know, especially our little ones, they carry germs. They're the ones that's coughing and different things there. But we want to make sure that we provide an environment that when they come to school, they can learn. But most importantly, those who are taking care of them when they come back home, they know that they're not bringing something back.
Right, exactly. I can recall I also serve as a substitute teacher in the Norfolk and Portsmouth school systems, and for the very first time, I had a kindergarten class that I was substituting in. And I went to substitute in the kindergarten class, and I was like, well, where's the teacher? And they're like, she's out sick. And so the teacher's assistant was coughing, and I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be, and I did catch a little something, the next couple of days. But I'm just trying to illustrate the point that, while the immune systems of young kids may be stronger, but they do carry some germs and viruses and things like that.
It's the same thing like wearing these masks.
Right.
They say that you don't wear the mask just to protect yourself, but to protect the others that are around you. And that's the same thing in those learning environments.
Right.
We got to make sure that we can be able to protect everyone else that's around you.
Right. Okay, my next question is dealing with a local issue. We know that the demolition of Young's Terrace, Tidewater Garden, and Calvert Square housing projects has already been approved, so I would imagine it's pretty much a done deal, and it will soon be underway. Is there a plan in place to address possible scenarios of student relocation, and how would you approach this issue?
Definitely with this particular issue, which goes back, and I've been following it even in my professional role with the community action agencies that I work with. When we look at our community, look here at Norfolk, and just the history, there's been a lot of feelings around this, redlining, you got to know your history.
Indeed.
And why people feel the way that they do. But I do believe that as long as we keep the lines of communication open and that we are transparent with individuals, it becomes a process that people can work with. It may not be easy, but it's something that we have to do intentionally. So I say all of that when we look at the public education component. We have got P.B. Young Elementary, Tidewater Park, even Booker T. Washington, J. Cox Ruffner, all of those schools are in that vicinity. Lindenwood, we even have some effect with that.
Right.
And so the process and the planning is ongoing. We know that phase one is right around where across the street from Ruffner, taking us all the way to Tidewater Park Elementary, right around to the school administration building. That's the phase one. And so there's going to be some disruption when it comes time to start planning, and as far as when you start moving and relocating folks. So the planning is ongoing. That's what I can say, is that there will be a plan in place once we have kind of, this whole pandemic has kind of thrown a wrench in some things too and slowed up some things. But Urban Strategies is the agency that's working with them there, and they're focused on how do you it's not just a relocation piece, it's about educating about finances and being able to take care of yourself in the respect of preparing outside of public housing, but then also to come back into a new level. But then when we look at our students, it's the same thing. It's like, how do we prepare for these schools? Is Tidewater Park getting a new school? Because there's been some picture renderings that shows a new school. Well,
Right.
what new school is that?
I've seen those.
But we haven't necessarily at the school division had a discussion about that. So there's the communication that has to still happen between the city. I believe that it's ongoing. There's much better communication than there has been in the past. Unfortunately, this particular session, I'm not serving on the facilities committee, so I'm not in the day-to-day operations of that, but I can definitely say that there will be a plan that our community and our parents will be aware of how we will address the issue with our students to make sure that the least impact to them is felt. So it's ongoing.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. I've always heard that all politics are local, so, and as promised, I guess with the advent of social media and all, this device here, the cell phone, it's changed the whole world. And I know for years I've watched, and I actually used to live across the street from where we are now, and we had this great big statue with Johnny Reb on top of it, triumphant, And so my question now is, just given the current climate of the fight for social justice everywhere, it seems like, even in Tokyo and Japan, I was amazed and saddened at the same time, because it took such a tragedy as the George Floyd tragedy to galvanize this whole movement. But bringing that all politics, this local piece back, I just want to know, there's been a lot of renaming of schools, streets, federal, state buildings, et cetera. What do you think will happen to some of our schools named after Confederate war heroes and the like?
Well, thank you for always, giving me the hard questions.
Well,
But we said
unfiltered.
unfiltered. But, I have lived in Norfolk my entire life. Three of the schools that are in question, of course, is W.H. Taylor Elementary, which I attended, Ruffner Academy, and, of course, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a proud Commodore that graduated from Maury High School. Those are the three schools that are named after Confederates that we've identified, and the board back in June during our retreat brought in the historians. And in that process of them looking at the history, also identified 9 other schools that had some particular tie to slavery.
Oh, my God.
And, you wouldn't really look at it. And I'll give you a perfect example, Campostella. Campostella, you kind of look at it, it's like, I mean, that don't look like anything, but it was a camp for the Confederacy that was named after the general's daughter, whose name was Stella. So it was like, okay, and about 40 years after that, they just added an O to it to make it Campostella. So, but that's a pretty easy one, because if you wanted to go change that one, you just take off the academy, the STEM, STEM academy, and just take off Camp Stella.
I was going to say, would it be Camp or would it be Stella?
Just take off Camp Stella. But the general consensus that came out from the board, and we have not taken an official vote on it, was that we wanted to move towards changing these names.
Right.
This is not an easy thing to do, because when you think about it, particularly at Maury High School, which a lot of people don't realize was actually named Norfolk High School, but was changed as a part of the Lost Cause campaign. Of course, the Civil War ended, and there was a very influential woman at the time who not only pushed for the name change at Maury High School, but also pushed to put that Johnny Red monument downtown.
Oh.
It was her. She was behind all of that.
Never stop learning.
Never started learning. So we've gotten information, but I can't tell you. I've had hundreds of emails, mail that's come in to me, particularly for about Maury. And my thing is that how do we maintain the history? Because at the end of the day, I've asked any of my class members who attended Maury High School, and it was nobody really, we knew the name was Matthew Fontaine Maury, but nobody really understood the history behind that. And for us, it was Maury High School. And you have some who say it's about what happens inside the school. It's not necessarily about the symbolism of a name outside of it. And we've looked up in I think it was Arlington, where they renamed a school that was named after Robert E. Lee High School. Well, now it's John Lewis High School.
Yep.
So there's a whole discussion, even amongst the board, in respect of, do we name schools after people? Our current policy says that you have to be deceased for 10 years, because there's a petition out there to name Maury High School the Lewis Cousins High School. But Mr. Cousins, who was a part of the Norfolk 17, passed away in January. Well, he wouldn't qualify under our current policy. So there's a lot of discussion, but what I can tell folks is stay tuned, because October, the board will revisit this. We want to get schools open, get our kids going again, and we revisit this topic because it will fall into the policy. I am serving on policy committee this year to look at our policy and to bring some recommendations. And I know that our board chair is also looking at formulating a community commission around it, so that both the board and the community have some input and buy-in to what potential names these schools could have.
Well, I was just thinking, when you were talking about naming the schools, I know that they changed the name of the Redskins to the football team, so I don't know if they're going to just say the school, just
Well, just call it
the school in
Norfolk
Norfolk,
school.
yeah, back to its home, to its history.
Well, and then this is other thing too. You've had some folks are saying, can you find the middle of the road? Well, like with Maury, just take out the Matthew Fontaine and maintain the name Maury. It doesn't take any reference to Matthew Fontaine, but it's Maury High School. But then you have others who are like, that's not enough.
Yeah, he got to go.
Yeah, so it's I'm sitting down there, and I will tell folks is that, because people probably, you say unfiltered. I believe, as a former national civil rights leader, that we need to have change, that there is a movement that's happening right now.
Right.
Very much like in the 1960s, there's a wave of our new generation of folks who are like, we have to continue this. And even with the death of John Lewis and C.B. Vivian, that those individuals, that they're passing, it's the time for us to pick up the mantle and to take up the march and to continue that, and to get this Voting Rights Act passed.
Right, we have to get that reauthorized.
Yeah.
One of the things, thinking about that, I think the argument that many people might put forth is that you're trying to destroy history. And I as a history buff myself, I study every war from the Revolutionary War and, all of that up until all the conflicts that we've been in, and I've studied it, diligently. But I don't think it's a matter of preserving history. I think it's the celebration piece, so when you build a monument to somebody, when you name a school after them, you're kind of celebrating them. And I think that's the real issue. And, people, I guess people on the other side of that argument.
And if I can add in that
sure.
one, so I've been talking with the Cousins family, and I believe that this city owes a great debt of gratitude to the members of the Norfolk 17. When people ask, well, what should we replace this monument with downtown? I believe that it should be a monument recognizing the Norfolk 17, because when you think about it, their single act and what they did that year changed the entire course of the history in this city. But I also am moving, even in my high school, and this is the first time I'm saying this out to folks here, but I've been working with our principal, with alumni, on how we can rename the auditorium at Maury High School as a part of the Lewis Cousins auditorium, to place a nice case outside of that, to put photos of his integration there, and to work with the principal on freshman orientation, how that becomes a part of freshman orientation, to educate them about the significant action that took place there at Maury High School. I believe that those are important, because people need to understand, our youth need to understand their history, to know where they came from, how we got where we are today, and how they can continue to take this march forward.
That's breaking news. So, having said that, you're a Commodore, proud Commodore. I'm a Common. I'm from Grammy, so of course I was when they started searching for names.
Y'all can't be perfect, but it's good.
Yeah, but he wasn't Confederate. But I looked up and I found that Grammy is named after the Marquis of Granby. So I really couldn't find any dirt under his fingernails. But
they'll say it was named after the street. Granby Street.
But the Granby Street was, named after the mark. Yeah,
exactly.
And it's also not the only Granby high school in the country. So I was like, wow, so that's some interesting, some fun facts. See, learn something every day. Right. Okay. My next question is, having substituted and my company, we run different programs, anti-bullying programs. We've done a lot of programs in the public schools. I was really naive, and I have come to understand and see the vulnerability of a lot of students that come from underserved communities, and some that don't come from underserved communities, just vulnerable students. And I found that the schools were not just the schools. The schools were a safe haven. They were a source of food, a source of counseling, a source of just comfort and love from the teachers. But so I was thinking about, I know we can't be, because of safety, I know they can't open the schools, but I'm still hopeful that there may be something in place that, some kind of safe haven for the kids. Perhaps the school district can work with the city as far as community centers or maybe libraries or something where we, and I think a lot of the kids have been identified, that we know that are in vulnerable situations. And I was just thinking that, I guess you can't say throw the baby out with the bathwater, but, if we just like blanket and put, some of these kids are gonna need to not be in somebody's house when during the school year. So I don't have the answer to that, but I just wanted your thoughts on that.
So this is so present and so real. I literally just had a conversation yesterday about how we could use some of our resources here, other locations that could partner with the school division, particularly in situations where you have parents who've got to go to work, but they can't afford, or they don't have a means to be able to provide, childcare. Being able to have a safe place that students can go in, continue with their learning, be able to practice the social distancing and the other COVID-19 safety measures we have in place. So there are discussions that are happening there, but there are also something that I have to give great credit to our city. and the ingenuity and thinking and forward thinking, they have 2 pop-ups that have, and I've been really widely out there pushing. Many folks may have heard about Open Norfolk and the focus that was on small businesses and getting them back safely and being able to open, but the city took a step forward. And further, and they did the Open Norfolk, which is these open green spaces. So you've got 5 points, and then you also have the old Richard Bowling site, elementary school, right out there off of Princess Anne. And so they're doing programming, and there's a lot of youth-focused programming that's out there where you can social distance, kids can get out. There's different classes that are going on, but there's partnerships that are happening even between the public schools and those spaces to even have our parents to come out and get trained. Our English language learners, which are primarily Spanish speaking and others who don't speak English, to have them come out and teach them how to use Dojo and teach them how to use some of the other things that are there. So there's partnerships and things that are happening. This is, and I remind people all the time that we're in a time, none of us have been through a pandemic.
Right.
You know, the last time we had something like this was almost 100 years ago. And so this is where we have to remember that we're in this together. It's not, you know, we have to really kind of, there's no crazy ideas. Everything needs to come on the table.
Okay.
And then we have to work to figure out how we can best manage this and help support one another. But you know, one of the things that ached me the most when I had to make the decision to go virtually, 100% virtual, was, again, thinking about those students, those particular students who the only safe haven that they had was to come to school, to get out of the house, to escape abuse. And the truth and the reality is that there's a large uptick of numbers of those cases that are occurring right now. And I just, you know, working with our school psychologists and our school leaders and being able to create a way, and I've talked with our administration, is there a reporting way? You know, that kids, through their computers, through the online, that they can report if they're not safe and they're in a situation.
That's great.
So there are things that are there. We may not have the answer right now, but we are actively working to ensure that we can make sure that our kids are still safe and secure even while they're at home.
Well, I think you know, just to kind of follow up on what you're saying, we have to enlist, you know, some of our community assets. You know, we have different churches and different organizations that have nonprofits, and I think that, you know, to, like, right now, we should put out a clarion call to say, hey, you know, our babies, you know, we got to take care of our babies. And, you know, moving to my next, I was going to say issue, but it's really a question, but for me, it's probably the same thing, a question and an issue. You know, not to date myself, but I remember I went to Norfolk Public Schools myself, and, you know, it was just an issue of books where, you know, schools on the west side, you know, they had better books than we had. You know, I remember that being a fight in and of itself. So, you know, with the bringing in of new technology, I just want to just kind of talk to you about, you know, where we're going as far as I still have family that live in you know, some of them live in the housing projects, and we just, you know, from Norfolk. So, what about the technology like Chromebooks and all those things? You know, are we checking to ensure that, you know, this evenly distributed with, let's say, this school versus that school? I know that, you know, and I understand, and I'm not really, like, you know, beating up on the school system, but my niece was doing her homework on her phone. You know, she's a high school student, and she was doing her, and I was like, well, where's your Chromebook? And she didn't have her Chromebook. And I'm like, oh, okay. Let me see what I can do, and, you know, start making calls. But what is the, you know, the school district, or, you know, just talk to me a little bit about, you know, evenly distributing the technology amongst all our students.
Definitely, and probably that situation with your niece was back in the spring.
It was hectic.
And exactly, it was very hectic. I mean, literally, we knew 2 weeks we were going to be out of school, and then the governor came back and said the school was shut down for the entire school year. And so we were in a scramble. I mean, and we weren't the only school division who was in the scramble. Now, Virginia Beach has a situation where they have one-to-one. Each one of their students have a device. Norfolk was not in that situation, but we were able to really quickly think about how we could use the devices that were already in our schools, get them cleaned, sanitized, and create a way that we could get them back out to individuals. We began to survey our households to find out who had access to devices, who had internet. While all that was kind of a stopgap for that situation, the division was actively working, and we have received additional funds. And I can say with confidence that we have more devices than we have students. And so this particular fall school year will be totally different. We have a virtual Scholars Academy for parents who do not want to send their children back to school for safety reasons. Those kids can completely take their entire education online. But what we're doing right now, and I say this for anybody who's listening,
Okay.
if your child does not have a device, you do not have internet access at home, the first place to start is to contact your school.
Okay.
The school that your child is supposed to attend, have them contact the school and let them know, we need a device, we need a Chromebook, we don't have internet access. And then I know that within like the next 2 weeks, I'm not quite sure when this is going out here, but in August, before schools start, we will start communicating out for a distribution. So where you can go to your school, go to the various different sites to pick
Okay.
up the devices. But this will be a totally different experience for our children. And just like you, I am always looking at equity. And I remember I've gone through Norfolk Public Schools, but I also know the schools that I went to. I went to Lawrencemont, Taylor, Blair, Morey. Those are all really nice schools, but it was all because of where I was located in Park Place and Lambert's Point.
Okay.
But I also realized the disparities that we have with several other schools that are in my ward that I represent, Lindenwood, Jaycox.
Right.
Where we have, challenges there, but we are working. We have an equity policy that the division approved back in 2015, but the focus I know for this year that the board collectively talked about in our retreat is that we are working on equity and looking at everything through an equity lens. And so one of the things I'm proud and excited about for this particular school year being on the policy committee is that opportunity for me to firsthand look at our policies, look at our regulations through an equity lens, work with my counterpart, Ms. Basine, and bring back recommendations for changes and working with our school superintendent and administration on how we can better support our students so when we're ready to go back into the classroom, we can look at everything from the budget, because everything starts at the budget, how we distribute our resources to make sure that we can provide the best learning environment and experience for our students.
Okay, so I have one more question for you. I know that you do a plethora plethora of things that you do in the community, and you have an event coming up tomorrow. Or could you tell us about this event and how did you develop the concept?
So I have a Live with Carlos Clanton show, and in the middle of this pandemic, everybody knows me. I like to get out and to be with my constituents, be with the community, and so trying to find different ways, very much like this podcast here, how do we connect with the community, keep them informed and engaged? So I moved my live show on to Saturday mornings, and this particular one is When Two Worlds Collide to Form a Lifelong Friendship, and it's Dr. Patricia Turner, who is a member of the Norfolk 17,
Very
and
familiar
former
with
city councilman Randy Wright. 2 years ago, I was at a holiday event, a fundraising event for Councilman Randy Wright, and I heard this story that I had never heard before about the two of them and how they literally call each other brother and sister.
Oh, wow.
And so I tell folks to tune in to check that out. You can also see the recast on my page and as well as on my YouTube channel, Live with Carlos Clanton.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to that. I just want to say thank you for coming in and blessing us with your presence, and
Anytime.
keep on doing the things that you're doing. And I want to thank everybody else for tuning in to Unfiltered with Bob Z. Have a great day.